Hey everybody, I'm Jim Bowley for jimbowley.com, and welcome to this video lesson on Two Paths to Pentatonic Mastery. Now, learning to play pentatonic scales is arguably the most important building block we have for developing our soloing skills. But unfortunately, many guitar players really only view pentatonics in one way, that is, up and back on one path of notes. To really master the fretboard, however, and to be able to play whatever you want whenever you want, you really need more than one way to get through your scale patterns. So in this lesson, I'm going to show you two pathways to connect the root notes of your pentatonic scales. And the end result of this should be improved fretboard vision, as well as longer lead guitar lines. And who doesn't want that, right? Let's get started. So this two paths concept works best for the minor pentatonic scale. So let's do a quick recap of this guitar staple. Now, a minor pentatonic scale is a 5-note scale that is comprised of the following scale degrees. You have a root note, the flatted third note of the scale, which is what gives it its minor character, the fourth note, the fifth note of the scale, and the flat 7 note of the scale, which is the secondary note that would give it its minor character. So if we're using E minor pentatonic, which is what today's examples will be played in, E would be the root note, G would be the flatted third, A would be the fourth, B would be the fifth, and D would be the flatted 7 note. Now, if any of this information is completely over your head, I suggest that you follow the link below to the full lesson on my website, and inside the lesson there is a link to another theory lesson that will help you figure out some of these technical theory terms. Many advanced players know that there are 5 large overlapping pentatonic patterns on the fretboard. Now, while it's certainly good to be able to play all of these in their entirety, and eventually you'll be able to do that as well, I think it's a bit overwhelming to think of all that when you're trying to improvise a solo, especially when you're kind of a rookie at this. So instead, I encourage my students to take one pattern and just work in octaves from root note to root note. So for instance, in the key of E minor, that would be from E to E. Each root to root section is a short pathway. You simply learn the short pathways and then you connect them to form longer pathways. Now this is an easy method for enhancing your fretboard vision. And our ultimate goal is to be able to play through these paths with enough focus and frequency that eventually the notes light up for us along the way. Path 1 is most easily demonstrated in the basic pentatonic scale that almost every guitar player learns how to play first. This path places the root note under finger 1 on string 6, and then it travels 1 octave across strings 5 and 4, eventually finishing up with the root note under finger 3 on string 4. Now this path requires no shifting, so we can call this an in-position type of scale. Let's take a closer look at this one. Pathway 1 has the root note under finger 1 on string 6, E, then the flatted third, the fourth, the fifth, the flatted 7, and eventually ending on the root note E under finger 3 on string 4. Backwards. So again, root to root. There are 3 important points to note about Path 1. Every single E on the fretboard, except those on string 1, can be the root of a similar, if not identical, pathway to the Path 1 that I just showed you. The second point that's important is that each Path 1 pattern starts with the root note under finger 1 and has the flat third on the same string. It's very important. And the third point is that whenever string 2 gets involved in the pattern, there's a 1 fret shift that you have to do due to the string's tuning. A 1 fret shift doesn't really alter the nature of this pattern as being in position though. Now here, let me show you an example of the same thing with the root note on string 5. The E minor pentatonic path 1 with the root on the 5th string looks exactly like the one that was on the 6th string. Root is on fret 7 of the 5th string, flatted 3rd, 4th, 5th, flatted 7, root, ending under the 3rd finger on string 3. Backwards. You can find the fretboard graphics for the remainder of the Path 1 octaves in the full lesson at jimbowley.com. Path number 2 is achieved by displacing the flatted 3rd to the next string higher in each pattern. Now remember when I said that it was important to note that in Path 1 the root note and the flatted 3rd are on the same string and the root note is under your finger 1? Well, in Path 2 we're going to use that same root note, but now we're going to place it under finger 3 and instead move the flatted 3rd note to the next string under finger 1, which is going to create a long diagonal shape. Let's take a closer look. Path 1 had the root note E and the flat 3rd G on the same string. In Path 2 we will change to play the root note with finger 3 and displace this G to the next string at fret 10 under our 1st finger. If you connect the dots, that would create a long diagonal. As opposed to Path 1, you see we're getting the same root to flat 3rd sound, we're just doing it across 2 strings as opposed to being on 1 string. Now the new positioning that we have means that we have to employ a 3rd finger shift so that we can complete the octave in the same fashion as pathway number 1. Let's check it out. Here is Path 2, starting from the E on 12. Under finger 3, the displaced flatted 3rd on 10 of the 5th string. We play the 4th under finger 3 now and shift it to B 2 frets higher, and then complete the octave in the same path as path number 1. Let's try that again. Finger 3 on the root, long diagonal to flat 3rd, 4th, shift up to 5, flat 7, root. When we come back down, we shift back to the flatted 3rd and end on our root under finger 3. A couple times up and back. And just like path number 1, every E on the fretboard can now be thought of as the starting root of pathway number 2. So here's an example with that root note on string 5 again. Here's a root 5 example of path 2. As you can see, it looks exactly the same as the root 6 example. Again, you can find the rest of the Path 2 octaves in the full lesson at jimbowley.com. There's another kind of hidden benefit to learning how to apply pathway number 2. By placing the flatted 3rd under finger 1 and not under fingers 3 or 4 as you would do in pathway number 1, you can apply some vibrato or even a slight bluesy bend to the flatted 3rd note, like so. Now the flat 3rds often enhance this way, but it's a little more awkward if you try to do that on the same string as the root using either finger 3 or finger 4. It just doesn't sit as well under your fingers. Now these pentatonic pathways may seem simple, but by learning them you're going to get a very large bang for your musical buck because they are used in thousands of riffs and solos. In the next lesson, I'm going to give you some exercises designed to enhance your fretboard vision and apply these pathways in a professional way. Now, until then, I would recommend that you get to know these octave paths as well as you possibly can. A couple ways to practice them would be to make sure to learn them with the root notes on the various strings, and also maybe to try practicing them in different keys. The caged keys, C, A, G, E, D, would be a great way to get started on that. Hey, thanks for hanging with me. I hope you enjoyed this lesson on Two Paths to Pentatonic Mastery. Now, if you'd like to see the lesson in full and with all the fancy graphics, please check out the lesson on jimbowley.com. The link is below. And there are lots and lots of free lessons on the site, so please be sure to take a look around. As well, while you're there, make sure to get on the mailing list, like me on Facebook, follow me on Twitter. It's all easily accessible on the right sidebar of the homepage. And of course, please subscribe to me right here on the YouTube. Until next time, keep rocking.